Hi, my name is Evelyn Hudson, and I attended Marshall County High School until my junior year in 2012, at which point I was accepted into the United World College of the Adriatic in Duino, Italy. I studied there for 2 years in the IB program and am now studying at the University of Kentucky. This is a video that's hopefully going to inform you a little bit about, before you apply, the things that would be good to think about and continue to go forward within. We're going to cover some things like classes that would do well for your preparation, participation within creativity, action, and service, which I'll talk more about, and living diversely. And then we're going to go back and think about some pros and cons of UWC itself. So first, let's dive into classes. It's always good to have very challenging classes, not only for applications, but for your own personal development. And UWC specifically is looking for students who have constantly looked for ways to challenge themselves, have never really been satisfied with their own place in education as a stagnant being. What's important to note on this is that they don't just want you to be challenged in one area. It doesn't count if you're really just doing a bunch of really hard math classes and not taking any kind of AP classes in the social sciences, or not having ever shown any interest in the arts, anything like that. The IB program kind of looks down upon that, mainly because the IB program itself requires that you have one class at least in a math, one class at least in a science, one class at least in a social science, and a class in your native language as well as another language. And then you have a little sixth subject that you can choose to specify in, but you do have to have those core subjects. So my advice to you would be, regardless of where you are in middle school or in high school, to start with that. Say, how can I challenge myself the most in the greatest variety of classes? This may take the form of independent studies later on in high school. I know that was my problem and some of my friends' problems at Marshall County, is that we have very challenging classes in some areas, but then it's possible to take all of them and you kind of just sit still. So instead of sitting still and having kind of a throwaway block, I really challenge you to take independent classes. Also, what's important is writing. There's a huge focus in all of the classes at UWC on writing technique, on writing analytically, on writing creatively. So I would practice, and I would practice often. From the time I was in middle school, I think I would practice writing essays, persuasive essays and letters and speeches, not only for applications, but also for my own personal development. To know how to write a persuasive essay or speech is very important in your life. I would also encourage you to learn a new language. That's always a nice thing to have in your pocket. I didn't know another official language. I didn't know a spoken language. I shouldn't say official language. I learned basic sign language before leaving, and that was my linguistic diversity. That really helped me. A lot of students are kind of put behind because they haven't had any experience with foreign languages. That's important because in an IB system, you have to learn another language. And if you have a basis in any language and learning, it's easier to learn another one, or easier to continue on in the one that you know. I would also encourage you to be educated on current events. Always stay in touch with what's important, not only in your state, not only in your nation, but around the world, as well as the thoughts of great thinkers and leaders in the past. It's always really impressive whenever you see someone who not only has their own ideas, but has understood and integrated the ideas of others. Theodore Roosevelt, Albert Einstein, Cleopatra, anyone from ancient Greece to yesterday on the street. Just eat it all up. Information is extremely powerful. I would also like to talk about the Creativity Action Service. Outside of studies in the IB, you are required to do a specific amount of hours within these three areas. Creativity is very evident as to what that is. You have to pick a creative activity, which you'll do, that can range from writing for a news publication within economics or philosophy, to making sculptures, to singing. They do require that, as well as requiring action, which is your physical activity. They want you to be physically active. for a specific number of hours a week, as well as give back to your community. So they require the same hours again for social service. This really encourages a well-rounded person, and the IB and UWC would like to see that within its students even before they come. They want to see students who are already engaged in their community, who are already engaged in physical activity, who care about their body and their existence and how it integrates with other people, who care about creativity, or at least appreciate it to some degree. We can't all be Mozart. But I would also encourage you to take leadership roles within those things. So the IB and UWC specifically are looking for applicants who not only do these things exceptionally, but go forth with their own initiatives, maybe collaborating across. Maybe you can do a physical activity that's also social service. Maybe you can do a creative activity that's also social service or also physical activity. They want to see overlap, initiative, and leadership. So if you can develop a plan for things like this, then that is excellent in their eyes. In my junior year, I taught theater to a group of autistic students through a lesson plan that I developed, and that was one of the biggest things that was mentioned whenever I was applying. So I think that anything like that you deeply care about and that can affect our community in a positive way, go for it, because it will certainly help. I would also say, although it's difficult in Marshall County sometimes with a less than 1% minority in many of the areas, I would still encourage you to try to live diversely. See diversity wherever you can and incorporate it within your own thought processes. So although it may not be within our community, at least question the homogeneity of your community to begin with. So the beliefs that may be espoused, whether or not you agree with them, still question them. Experience culture, both your own and others, if that means through literature, through camps, through traveling, through food. Food is a great way to experience culture. I definitely encourage you to go forth and take those on full speed. Try and experience as many different cultures as you can. Now, these cultures, and our culture in Marshall County, I'm sure you've noticed, or at least your parents have, that they affect the infrastructure of your community. Similarly, the culture of each individual UWC reflects how the UWC is run. So it's important in that way to understand the shift of cultures, because if you're expected to live within a different one, not only will you be eating different foods, speaking a different language, dancing different dances, you'll also be involved in an entirely differently motivated government system, educational system, and social structure. So being informed about these things improves how you can adapt to them or live within them. So that's generally some good tips for applying. But now I would like to talk a little about the pros and cons of UWC. A lot of people ask about those. Before you apply, I think it's best to know them, even though I think you should apply regardless. Positively about the United World Colleges is they are an international experience, and that looks really good for universities, as well as really does a lot for enhancing your character. It makes you an independent individual. That's great. You have to live on your own within a community that's very structured, of course, extremely safe, but you are essentially on your own. So being as it is your last 2 years of high school, or as it was for me, your last year of high school and then another year. You do learn a lot through that international community. There are 94 to 100 different countries represented in every UWC across only 200 students. So that's a lot of variation. That's a lot of really close-knit cultured development. It's also a challenging education. I cannot stress enough the importance to this, that you need to challenge yourself. You need to continue to improve. You cannot simply sit still. You can't allow yourself to be bored in a class. I completely disagree with that lifestyle, especially after going to UWC. So you're competing against the most intelligent kids across the world. to be very honest. And you're surrounded by faculty and students who are willing to help you and challenge you daily. Before I got used to life at UWC, however, that meant that there was a lot of stress. I would study sometimes for 5 hours a day before I could get into the rhythm and could understand better. And it does get better, but it is really difficult in that sense. So that's kind of a con. Other cons, you are away from home. Sometimes hours in a plane ride away from home, like 11 hours in a plane ride on the way home, as it was for me. You may have to travel for an entire day. And that's difficult. Being away from your family, being away from your comfort zone, being away from your friends that you've known your whole life, as is often the case in Marshall County at least. It's a difficult transition for a lot of people. A lot of people become very homesick. And as I said, it does get better. But then for people like me, I never really got homesick because things like Skype existed, email existed. I ended up getting a phone overseas in Italy. I didn't use it very much because there just wasn't really much time. You're kept very busy, so your mind's always occupied with other things. There's almost not enough time to be homesick sometimes, I feel. But for a lot of people, that is an issue. I would also say that for some, a pro and or a con is that your beliefs are very heavily challenged. As a Christian, as a Christian, I found my beliefs very challenged in the first year, and kind of fell away from my own faith for a while, but then was reaffirmed in the second year, kind of through the stress, through need, and through understanding of my own situation and greater understanding of my own beliefs in reference to other beliefs. It can both affirm and destroy a lot of things that you would have believed growing up. And for some people, that's really bad. That's very dangerous. Some families especially are not all right with that kind of questioning or challenging. But I definitely encourage it. I see it as a pro. In personally speaking, it has only allowed me to affirm my own belief to others to a greater extent than I previously would have been able to before. Before I may have said, well, just because it's true. Not a very good proof. So, aside from those cons, I would like to take you back to the third pro, is that it does open doors. There are many opportunities that I would not have had it not been for United World College, and many people I would not have known. It opens doors not only for universities and scholarships and fellowships, but also literal doors around the world. I have stayed in Macedonia, in Croatia, in Spain, in France, in Great Britain, in Slovenia, all just by the grace of my friends, these people that you meet that so desperately want to see you. You know that you have a home everywhere in the world because you know that you are loved in at least 94 countries in the world. So it opens doors not only metaphorically, but also literally. In conclusion, I would like to encourage you all to apply. And this is my email. Please send me an email if you have any questions or if you'd like to know more about my experience. Thank you so much and good luck.